So I'm going to just briefly introduce myself and then talk about something that I find interesting, which is meal prepping and our nervous system and how the two are connected, and why that's important to talk about. And then dive into everything you see here that I hope you can see, and talk about the chia pudding and do the demo. So my name is Katie, for those of you who don't know me. I live in Sausalito with my partner, and I am a behavioral food therapist. So I help my clients cultivate a healthy relationship to food, body, and mind. And I have an office in Sausalito and in the city, and I see clients online as well. And I use a coaching model, so I partner with my clients to help them overcome things like emotional eating or food guilt or disordered eating behavior, or some of them want to learn just how to make more mindful, intentional food choices and lifestyle choices. And so I help them look at 3 pillars in their life. We look at not just what we eat, but also how we eat and how we live, and how we think about food and body. So what we eat, and how we think about food and body. And really, we spend a lot of the time on the last 2 pillars, how we eat and how we think, because it's about how we're living, how we're showing up for ourselves each day that really makes an impact on our nervous system, and how we are, cultivating a relationship with food, how we're in dialogue with ourselves, how we're treating ourselves, the self-talk all impacts our nervous system. And we have so many layers of stress in our day and our lives, right, that we can't avoid. We can't get rid of. But then there's this extra layer of stress that we often unknowingly add to compound everything, that has to do with how we're thinking about food, how we're interacting with food, the judgment that we place on food, thinking things are good and bad, black and white. And this is unnecessary stress that can really impact the stress in our body. There's a direct link, mind to body. And so that's what I want to draw attention to. We want to do the things that can bring a relaxation response, because that can positively impact all systems in our body. Our immunity, it can strengthen, it can boost our digestion, our gut health, which is important for immunity. It can impact our mood, our energy, our focus, our hormone balance, our blood sugar. So really, focusing on what are those small things that we can do in our day-to-day life and in thinking about food and in interacting with food that can bring and encourage that relaxation response. And that's where chia pudding comes into play. The link is that when we can carve out time in the kitchen to prep a few things ahead of time and to really set ourselves up for the week, then we are going to be coming into the kitchen day to day in a more relaxed space. We feel like we won't be starting from scratch, that we have a few things here and there in the fridge to help us out. And something like the chia pudding falls into what I think of as like the breakfast category or the snack category. And those are 2 areas in our kind of food life throughout the day that we don't always think about. We overlook and we just say, whatever, we'll just fall, back on our go-tos. And they can be anchors in our day. They can help with transitions in our day and set us up for the rest of the day. So I have a framework for how I like to think about organizing meals for the week. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but part of that framework is thinking about what can I make ahead for the breakfast and the snack category. And that's why I want to focus on chia pudding today, because it's something that can be made ahead. It can store in the fridge really well throughout the week and serve us in multiple ways and be used for different people's tastes and needs. So hopefully this will provide just a different variety for you all. I'm going to go ahead and start. I don't know if you can see the little stove I have right here, but I'm going to go ahead and get it started and start cooking the pears, and then I'll explain to you how this is all going to work once it's going. So I have pears in here. I have 3 pears. 2 are cut up, and I'm just going to cut the 3rd one. You want them ripe, not overly ripe, but it really ultimately doesn't matter because you're going to cook them down, and you just don't want them too firm because the pears add the sweetness. You're not adding any additional sweetness. So you just want the pears to cook and stew for a few minutes, 6 or 7. So I'm just going to add the last one in, and then I'll explain to you how this is all going to work once it gets cooking. So I'm adding water. I added water and orange juice, so a juice from 1 orange. And that's just going to stew, like at a heavy simmer for 6 or 7 minutes. So here's the roadmap. Usually when you make chia pudding, what do? You add liquid to chia seeds and you mix it together. And then maybe you add some sweetener like maple syrup or honey and spices, something like that. The difference with this chia pudding is that you cook the pears down with either water or you can use orange juice. I just squeezed a whole orange and then added a little bit of water as well. And then it simmers and stews and you blend that up, and then that creates your liquid. And so then when you mix the pear blended, liquid together with the chia seeds, it infuses that pear flavor throughout the whole chia pudding. It's so simple, but it's a very nice subtle difference. So while that simmers, I'm going to show you what else I'm going to add to the blender. So first of all, I wanted to share with you this technique that I learned of blending the pears, cooking them down, blending them, and then mixing them with the chia seeds. Comes from a cookbook, Amy Chaplin, if you guys are familiar with her. She has a few cookbooks out, and so I learned of that technique there. But I've kind of made it my own, changing up a few things. So what I'm going to add into the blender with the cooked pears is almond butter. So almond butter adds a little bit of flavor. So the almond pear flavor is really nice together. It adds some thickness and it adds some healthy fats and protein. So it adds more kind of oomph to the chia pudding. You could use other nut butters. You could use cashew butter because it's not too strong of a flavor. If you have a nut allergy, you could probably use sunflower seed butter. I haven't tried it myself, but I don't know why that wouldn't work well. Peanut butter would probably be a little too overpowering for the flavor with the pears, would be my guess. And then with the almond butter, I like to add vanilla extract, or you could do vanilla paste, or if you had vanilla seeds, seeds from a vanilla pod, you could use that as well. And then just a little pinch of salt. You always need salt to kind of, bring out all the flavors, even in sweet things. And that's it. So once the pears are added in, that is what I'm going to blend up. So in the meantime, I would take like a medium-sized bowl, something that's fairly deep. And if you have a glass bowl, the better, because when you mix the chia seeds together with the liquid, you'll want to see how it's mixing together, because chia seeds have a tendency to clump and you can't always tell when you're mixing it. So that's kind of the base. Another thing I like to add in, and if you didn't have like nut butter on hand, if you had hemp seeds, I'm almost out, so I barely have any, so I won't be using it today, but hemp seeds give you also some good omega-3 fatty acids like chia seeds. They give some more protein as well. They're a soft little seed, slightly nutty. When they blend up, like if you add them to a smoothie, they're just really creamy. They blend up and just thicken it a little bit and add some creaminess. So that would be another idea. And then that's your base. That's your base flavor. Vanilla, pear, almond, and orange, a little bit of orange. So from there, I would, for the first time you make it, do that and see how you like it. I love the pear flavor paired with, no pun intended, the almond and the orange. But you could also add orange zest. You could add lemon juice to add more of a citrus. You could also add lemon zest. And then you can do a few different spices. So cinnamon and pear, or cardamom and pear. Cardamom has a citrusy flavor, so you could do cardamom with the orange or cardamom with the lemon and the pear. So those are some variations if you wanted to change it up from week to week, or if you just wanted to make a big batch of the base flavor recipe and then add those additional ideas into your individual bowls. So I am just going to stir the pears. You can see how they start to soften and cook down. And you just want them, you know, soft enough to where when you blend them up, they'll fully blend into a creamy, you know, liquid. Okay, I'm gonna let that cook just one more minute. If you have questions, I will pause right now. If you wanna ask anything, you can unmute yourself or you can type in the chat box.
Could you use other fruit, like peaches, perhaps, if they're in season? Because I thought the peaches would go really well with the almond butter.
That's a really good idea. I have not tried peaches, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work because they're also soft, and when you cook them, they kind of have similar texture as pear. I think apples could work as well. Yeah, you could do like a warmer, you know, wintry version with apples. I also know berries work, so you could do mixed berries, or you could just do blueberries. You could do fresh or frozen. You may have to play around with the amount of berries in liquid because berries may not have as much or extract as much liquid when they're being cooked like pears do. But I think nectarines would also be good along the same lines of peaches. So that's a good question. Yeah, as we're coming into the spring and summer months. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions before I keep going? Okay.
Did you only use one pear? Because it looked in the pot you had a lot more than one pear.
Yeah, good question. There's 3 pears. So this is 6 tablespoons of chia seeds, and I will send you the recipe this afternoon.
Okay.
3 pears to 6 tablespoons of chia seeds.
Okay.
So ideally, you'd want to let this cool a little bit, but I'm not going to make you wait like 10 minutes to watch it cool. So I'm just going to, actually, let me move this over here. Can you see that? Yeah. Ooh. I'm just going to pour the pears and the liquid into the blender. And you can use any type of blender. I don't think you necessarily need a really strong blender here because the pears are really soft and you're using nut butter.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're going to be able to see it blended. I'll try to move this over. I just want to show you real quick what that looks like. It smells like, you know, pear and almonds and vanilla. I'm just going to blend it one more time. Okay, that's good. So that's it. Those are your 2 components, your chia seeds and this pear liquid. And you just want to pour the liquid into the chia seeds. I don't know if you guys have seen these little scrapers. They're for blenders and they get around the blade. But they're really helpful for getting liquid out of blenders and getting all of it out so you don't feel like you're wasting. Okay, so from here, before you took the liquid out of the blender, you could taste it and make sure you like the taste of it, and you could add anything if you needed to, because this will be the flavor that you're going to have throughout the chia pudding. So you want to make sure that you like the liquid before you add it to the chia pudding. Can you see this? Yeah. So now you just want to whisk it together. Definitely use a whisk because the chia seeds have a tendency to clump. So from here, I like to just whisk it well for a few, seconds and then set it aside for like 5 minutes. and then whisk it again. And that will also help aerate it and cool it down, but also as you whisk chia seeds with liquid, that's what helps to thicken it. So chia seeds are, they have a lot of soluble fiber. That means that they expand in liquid, they absorb a lot of liquid, a lot more than you would expect. So as they're combined with liquid and whisked together, they start to thicken up, and that's what makes the pudding. So if you're not, I think most of you are familiar with chia pudding and you eat it, but if you're not, then it's similar to like tapioca pudding in a way. It has like that custardy base. So that's what you're going for here. And then from here, after it cools and you whisk it a few more times, you can just put the lid on and store it in the fridge. Usually I like to let it set up in the fridge for a little bit, for at least an hour or two, or I make it like the day before or the night before and have it the next morning for breakfast. And it will thicken more and kind of set up and become a little more, you know, like have more volume. But if you didn't want to wait, at least just whisk it for a bit, for like, you know, throughout 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and it should be, you know, come together well enough. So I'm going to put this aside because I made chia pudding earlier, a few days ago. So I have some of that left that I want to show you how I bring it together. So I need a spoon. This is some chia pudding that I made, and it's been in the fridge. The good thing about the consistency is you can move it up or down. So you can add more liquid if you want it thinner, and you could take a liquid away if you wanted it a little thicker. But this is your base. So if you are in a warm climate and you like something cold for a snack or a breakfast, then you could have it out of the fridge. I don't live somewhere warm, and it doesn't ever really feel warm. So sometimes I like to keep the chia pudding out for an hour before breakfast or before a snack, so it comes to room temperature. And then I like to do a few things with it. So I like to turn it into more of a porridge. So I will warm up some milk. I use like oat milk or almond milk or cashew milk, and I warm it up, and then I will pour it into the chia pudding and just mix it around a little bit. It's hard to show you in the bowl without the milk like pouring out. But then this will warm up the chia pudding a little bit. It will feel like a porridge or oatmeal, but you're not having to cook it, so you're not doing any work. And then it has a little bit more liquid as well. So if you don't like it thick, this is a way to thin it out. And then for texture, if you don't love the creamy texture or you want more contrast, I like to add a few things to top it. I like to add granola, crunchy kind of granola with nuts and seeds and coconut flakes. And then I also like to add cacao nibs. I don't know if you can see. They're the raw cacao, so they're bitter.
Okay.
And they're the cacao pods, so they are crunchy and they're just kind of crushed up. So they're not the powder, the cocoa powder. So they're just a little bitter and they have crunch, but they pair really well with something sweeter like the chia pudding or the granola. So I just like to add that on top as well. Pear and chocolate go really well together, so adding the cacao nibs is a nice combination. So that's it. I like to add fruit on top as well sometimes, so frozen berries or more pear cut up on top. So having the pear kind of work throughout the chia pudding is one thing, and having the pear on top is another thing. And then having a crunch, I think, is really important to contrast the chia pudding itself. So I'm trying to remember, there's other things I mentioned, like the spices. Sometimes I will just sprinkle cinnamon or cardamom on top if I didn't add it into the chia pudding. So that's it. It's very simple to make a big batch like this, store it in the fridge, and then just scoop it out when you need it, and then customize it. You could almost have something like a chia pudding bar if you're serving a few different people in your family, you could put different toppings, especially if you had kids or you wanted to get them involved or have them become interested in eating this. Have toppings so that they could choose their own toppings and put their own meal together. And that kind of goes for any type of meal, right? It can go for a smoothie bar, an oatmeal bar, taco bar, salad bar, whatever, having different options for people to choose from. Any questions about this kind of technique and different way? Do you feel like this is doable? Do you feel like the extra step of like cooking the pears and blending them up is worth it? And how long can this be stored in the fridge? 5 days. I would say 4 to 5 days. Okay. I wouldn't do longer than 5 days. It will definitely probably get thicker. It will thicken a bit more. But 4 to 5 days, it should be good. But with the pear in it, I would say if you're making this like the really basic way without cooked fruit in it, it could last 5 to 6 days perhaps, especially if you're using like a nut milk that has a expiration date a few weeks out. But with the cooked fruit, I would say 4 to 5 days tops. Yeah.
How many serving sizes does it make? Or does it depend on if you're having it breakfast or snack?
Yeah, I would say 4 to 6 servings, depending on how you're eating it and, how big of a bowl and what else you're adding to it. Yeah. But I would say 4 bigger servings, 6 smaller ones. And I would also mention, and most of you guys know this if you eat chia pudding, that it's voluminous, like it has a lot of volume, but it doesn't mean that it's going to fill you up long term. Like it's not calorie dense necessarily, depending on what you're adding to it. So if you're wanting it to last you for several hours, you definitely want to add a few of the things that I mentioned, like the almond butter in the blended liquid, maybe hemp seeds. I like to sprinkle hemp seeds on top, which you could do actually with the cacao nibs and the granola. That all adds a bit more, substance to it. So I wanted to share with you a few more things. If you are interested in any of these topics and you want to do a deep dive and get one-on-one support with them, I offer a free 30-minute consultation to visit with you, hear about your health goals and your challenges, and discuss ways that you could move forward. So if you're interested in that, feel free to get in touch to schedule that. Obviously, everything is online right now. I've moved all of my in-person clients online, but it works like this. I see my clients on Zoom, face-to-face. So I've surprised myself how connected I feel on Zoom these days. So it's nice as long as I can see you guys.
Okay, bye.